All right, welcome back, everybody. This is game 3 of the 1K that we held recently at GuuBuu Hobby. This is going to be Dragon versus Dragon. I believe this is actually pretty much exactly a mirror match. Not only are they running the same type, I think they're running pretty much the exact same deck. There might be one or two card difference between the two. Both are running the pretty popular Turbo Blaze Dragon deck. It's been seeing a lot of play recently. Takes use of the Reshiram that can accelerate energies from the hand, as well as that Raging Bolt, which can just hit any target. Does 30 damage for each energy attached to it, and it can choose any target. Many decks, including Dragon, don't have any way to protect their bench Pokemon from that snipe damage. So something like Raging Bolt can just be very powerful against those types of decks. Can just completely pick off whatever targets it wants. Then we'll use things like the baton to move those energies from the Raging Bolt to another target once it finally gets KO'd. So it's a very stable deck with lots of power and options. So hopefully this will be a very exciting match for us to watch here. Both players are shuffling up, some mulligans happening. I think if I remember this game correctly, we've got just two mulligans maybe from our red player, maybe just one. We'll see in a second here. I'm pretty sure this is actually one that I was watching, though. If I'm being honest, I do not remember this one very well. But we do actually get a mulligan from our top player as well with the gray sleeves. Maybe we'll call them Marnie and Raihan, since they you may not be able to see this in the recording, so we usually put up an overlay, but on the side they've got little dice boxes. One has Marnie and one has Raihan, but never mind. I was thinking that maybe that might be a good way to identify our two players, but again, you won't be able to see those two. But on top, again, we do have our player shuffling up for another hand, as well as our player on the bottom. I think looks like player on the bottom did have a Raging Bolt, so we do get another mulligan on top. So there was a couple mulligans from one of our players. Red is going to get at least one additional sleeve. Additional sleeve? What am I talking about? One additional card from that mulligan. It's not really something you ever want to see. There's very rare times where you want to get those mulligans in. I mean, if you're playing a mill deck or something, I could see a situation where you're like, hey, you know what, maybe that one or two cards could make the difference. Same time, though, those extra resources in hand can just spell your doom. So Gray does find a basic. Is going to get one extra card here for our player on the bottom. Both players getting out of the way, starting off with Regidrago for our player on top and Raging Bolt for our player on bottom. Do you see Battle VIP Pass in hand for our player on top? Definitely a card you want to see in your opening hand. I'm sure, as everybody is aware that's watching this video, you can only play that on your first turn. So if you don't have it right now, then you will never get to use it. Thankfully, there are lots of cards in the Pokemon TCG like Ultra Ball, Quick Ball, Cynthia and Caitlin, Guzman Hala, tons of different ones that that require you to discard cards from your hand to get their full effect. It's not a terrible thing for it to still be in your deck after the first turn. At least you can use it for something and not feel like it's a complete waste. But ideally, you want to use it right now so you can get additional Pokemon. Unlike Buddy Buddy Poffin, which lets you find two Pokemon that have 70 HP or less, Battle VIP Pass is any two Pokemon. So right now our player can find any of their basics, start getting set up. I don't think this build, gosh, I actually don't totally know if the Turbo Blaze decks run Dreepy. Dracloak, isn't a good attacker because, there unfortunately is no Dragon type Dracloak in the format. Hopefully, eventually, Pokemon will actually print a single prize Dragon type Dracloak, but at least for now, there isn't one. I'm sorry, Dragapult. So you're kind of stuck just going into that middle evolution, which, while it does have a powerful ability, it is kind of taking up bench space. And again, I'm not totally sure that this actually does run that. So it does get Raging Bolt and Dradagon. Then going right back in, that mysterious treasure. So fighting Tatsuguri. Tatsuguri, a great card to increase the consistency of your deck. When it's the active, you can look at the top 6 cards and take a supporter from there. Might be a little bit difficult for our player to get this Regidrago out of the active to be able to use that ability this turn. But it is a great Pokemon to have down so that if you do get KO'd, you can come up with your Tatsuguri, use that to attract customers, find a supporter, and maybe change your game plan for the turn. So quick balling away a Avery, and gonna find another Pokemon to put down on the bench. Looks like our player on top is basically fully set up on their board. I believe they had an energy in hand as well, so they are gonna get an energy attachment this turn. Able to use Dragon Horde to draw a couple cards first. Pulling out their ability markers so they can keep track of that. Actually, ooh, they do not have an energy in hand, so not going to get an energy attachment. They don't have the most ideal hand, but there we go. Passing over to our player on bottom, who I guess does have some energy. So maybe that's the energies that I was thinking I had seen. Hand for our player on bottom does not look super strong. They do have a nest ball, so they're going to get at least one more Pokemon down. Wonder if we'll see their own Tatsuguri, or could possibly see a Regidrago. They are debating Drampa as well. So let's see. So far from both players, we are not seeing that Reshiram. I actually think it might be prized for our player in red. We can see their deck a little bit easier as they're going through it. Honestly, it kind of looks like a decent number of their Pokemon are prized. I didn't see a Tatsuguri. Like I said, I may be wrong. They may not be running basically the same list, but I was pretty sure that this matchup was more or less almost the exact same 60. But it could be a little bit more different than I had realized. So it does get the Regidrago. Not shuffling up. Did look at the Turbo Energize, so maybe they had an Arven in hand that I didn't see. They do. Okay, so they got Arven. Going to be able to get that Turbo Energize and their own Battle VIP Pass. Both players opening up very strong, though I would say it's a little bit stronger for our red player. This is one of the reasons why a lot of the decks like to go second. Those supporters are just so strong. And there you go, I was wrong. Their Reshiram is not prized. I just missed it as we were going through the deck. So Reshiram coming down, going to be able to help this player potentially accelerate energies later on in the game. Also has Max Elixir in hand. So after they shuffle up, they'll be able to use that card as well, potentially get 2 energy attachments this turn. That would put them off to a fantastic start, get them going and ready to attack very soon. Debating the Scoop Up Net, so gonna get that Raging Bolt out of the active so they can get some Regidrago. Thinking they want to draw some extra cards this turn. Almost never a bad idea. So Turbo Energize going down, as well as a Grass Energy onto that Regidrago. This is a smart play from our player. Looks like they are asking if they had shuffled yet. They had not. I believe I was sitting here, again, I think I was sitting here watching this game. I'm pretty sure I told the player that, no, you need to shuffle. You've been waiting for it. So not going to Turbo Energize first. Probably going to use that Max Elixir, otherwise there would be no reason to shuffle the deck here. And yep, there we go. So we got Max Elixir, potentially 4 total energy coming down this turn. Does find a Fire Energy. Going to put that down on that Dradagon. Our player on the bottom getting set up very well. While our player on top did have a lot of ways to find Pokemon, they unfortunately did not get the energy attachment. So they're a little bit behind on energies at the moment. And in a mirror matchup like this, you do not want to be the one that is falling behind. So I think likely using Turbo Energize now, or maybe that was a shuffle. They might have yeah, okay. So they did want to draw one more card first. And there we go. There's the Turbo Energize. So getting 2 more energies. Almost certainly going to go down on this Raging Bolt. They want to get that powered up so they can start attacking very soon. Ooh, actually looks like they're looking for the Dradagon. I'm not sure if they're worried about their Regidrago getting KO'd on this next turn, or they just want to set up a more stable board. guess the Raging Bolt is not necessarily the main attacker that they want in this matchup. A lot of these dragons do have a lot of HP, so it would take a fair number of energies on the Raging Bolt before you can actually start attacking. I think since it is 30 damage per energy, you do need 3 to be able to take a Tatsuguri. You need, let's see, 5 to take out the Raging Bolt, 6 for Regidrago. So, okay, yeah, it's not the best attacker in this specific matchup. So again, always good to set up some additional attackers whenever you're playing. So we are back to our player on top. Did see a couple of supporters in hand, but can't quite see. They got an Irvin of their own. So going to be able to start finding some cards from the deck they need, getting it a tool as well as an item card. Will not be surprised to see something like a Professor's Letter to help them find energies, and then maybe their own Turbo Energize. The moment that is definitely one crucial thing that they are certainly missing is energies, as well as, well, I guess really just energies. That's all I'm trying to say there. I think that's probably the most important thing for them to get this turn is to start getting their own energy attachments going. Again, they don't want to fall behind. Dragon it's not a super tricky deck. This build in particular does have some plays that it can make, but overall it's still a pretty straightforward brawler style deck where you're just attaching energies, using powerful attacks with Pokemon that are relatively large basics. So they're not super easy to KO, and they do have powerful attacks, but they have the downside of being difficult to charge up. So if you're getting those energy attachments going, then you're able to get your attacks off and start taking prizes. But this is definitely not something like Lost Zone deck or Spread deck, where you're just setting up damage counters, predicting all those KOs that you want later on in the game. Again, it's just a get energies down and start hitting. Does find Luxurious Cape as well as Professor's Letter, grabbing a fire and a water energy out of the deck. See where they ultimately decide to put those energies. Be curious to see if they put it on the Regidrago to start potentially powering that up. They didn't go for the Turbo Energize, so I'm not sure if that's either prized or maybe in their hand already. Could also see this going down on the Dradagon to start setting up their own. They're likely expecting their opponent to take a prize first, so again, wouldn't be surprised to see it go down on the Dradagon. It's actually a very tricky matchup to navigate. While both decks are, again, relatively straightforward, it's a very interesting matchup because you've got that Dradagon down on the bench. Both players realize, whoever takes the initiative, they're probably just going to get KO'd right back with their opponent's opposing Dradagon. So, it's a lot of times you're maybe reluctant to actually start taking the attacks. And since both players are set up pretty well here, neither player necessarily wants to just be that one to take the initiative. Because if let's say our player on the bottom, got energies on their Regidrago, KOs their opponent's Regidrago, then Dradagon comes up, takes a KO on Regidrago, other player's Dradagon comes up, takes a KO up on that Dradagon. So in that situation, it would work out fairly well with the current board state if you took the initiative. But if another player can get like their Raging Bolt or something else powered up, then whoever really has more attackers is going to be the winner in this matchup. That does mean in this situation, Red is looking in a much better position. They have the energies down, 4 in play on their first turn, whereas our player on top across 2 turns so far has just gotten 1 energy into play. It's going to make it difficult for them to stay in this game. They want to be sure that they can ultimately come on top. But Malo and Lana coming out from Pokegear 3.0, not the supporter they probably wanted to see. Does let them get the Regidrago out of the active, but I don't think that's what they want to do. I mean, they could use that next turn to maybe come up into their Tatsuguri and find maybe a better supporter, but you're using your supporter for turn to maybe find another supporter that might help you next turn. Not the strongest play, so again, probably not what the player wanted to see. Fortunately, that is all our player on top is doing, so passing back over. Trainer's Mail going down for our player on bottom. Ooh, Enhanced Hammer. That's a tough choice. You might want to grab that now in anticipating the dragon energy. It's not useful in the moment, so if your opponent or yourself uses a card like Iono, Marnie, N, then you won't have access to that. So player ultimately deciding for Guzma and Hala instead, they want to probably find their own dragon energy. Gonna discard Mela, and they're debating one other card. I think that was Clara that they were debating a second ago, but putting that aside and getting rid of a water energy. So I'm going to grab a special energy, a tool, and a stadium. So out comes dragon energy, very powerful energy that lets you count as 2 energies of any type whenever you attach it to your dragon Pokemon. Absolutely just crazy energy. I remember when I first got into GLC and I saw somebody pull that out and I was like, what the heck? This is completely wild. Up to that point, some of the strongest energies I had seen were things like double colorless, twin energy, which provide 2 colorless energy. So to see this card that is like, yeah, 2 of any color energy as long as it's attached to a dragon Pokemon was just absolutely crazy. So our player does get Silent Lab, the baton, as well as that dragon energy. Silent Lab could be a way for them to shut off their opponent's Regidrago as well as Tatsugiri. I believe our player on the bottom in red sleeves is feeling in a much better position. They're almost certainly aware that they are looking a little bit stronger right now. So if they can keep resources out of their opponent's hand with that Silent Lab, it might be worth it. Double Dragon is going to enable this Regidrago to start attacking this turn. So it looks like our player is going to take the initiative. Also has the Lux Cape, so not going to get counter KO'd by that Dradagon. Floatstone also going down on the Reshiram, so now has a pivot Pokemon that can go up, accelerate some energies, and then get right back out of the active. Using Dragon's Horde, getting 1 additional card, and there we go. Red takes the initiative, takes the first prize. They are looking very strong here. Up goes Dradagon. If our player on top has something like Field Blower, they can still take a KO this turn, but then their opponent just goes up with Dradagon and KOs them right back. They'd need something like their own Luxurious Cape, which I actually think they do have in their hand, so they could protect their Dradagon from the counter KO. Doesn't give them an amazing follow-up, but at least doesn't, walk right into their opponent's hand. We do know they've got Maul and opting for the Wishful Baton instead, so... And Night Stretcher, so Regidrago coming back out. Maybe going to use that as their follow-up attacker. Luxurious Cape going down. Gosh, I said this is basically the same 60, and not only is it the same 60, but they're playing very similar to each other. So Marnie going down, there's that hand disruption that I was just talking about. So if our player on the bottom had grabbed Enhanced Hammer, it would now be at the bottom of the deck. Guzma and Hala ultimately the much better decision. Player in red is going to get 4 cards from that Marnie, where the player on top is going to get 5. And okay, Reshiram was in the prize for our player on top, is able to get it out with that Hisuian Heavy Ball that they found off the Marnie. So now, again, we're back to a board state that looks very similar. The only thing that's really different is that Wishful Baton as well as that Tatsugiri. Otherwise, both players are more or less kind of staring each other down with the exact same stuff down. Oh, sorry. I guess if I'm being thorough, we've got the Floatstone on the Reshiram for our red player as well. So unfortunately, I'm not seeing the Floatstone for our player on top. So they are just going to go ahead and hit this Regidrago, setting it up for potentially taking 2 prizes on an upcoming turn. Still, the biggest problem, though, for our player on top is that they weren't able to use that Turbo Energize, where the player on bottom was able to do that. Ooh. Out comes the Field Blower. So our player is going to be able to get rid of both that Luxurious Cape as well as the Wishful Baton. This is not looking good for our player on top at the moment. They're just so behind on energies. And now they're just in a situation where they can just get KO'd over and over again, whereas the player on the bottom, they've got things set up. If Regidrago goes down, they just go up with Dradagon, take KO. They've got Professor's Letter. They're getting more energy out of the deck. Going to be able to continue to power up that Raging Bolt as well. They've got 3 attackers right now, whereas our player on top just has the 1. And that 1 attacker is about to be KO'd. They do have Tatsuguri, so that can help them find some additional a supporter that can help them get back into the game. But I don't really know what they would want to grab. There's nothing on the bench that they can try to trap in the active. There's a Floatstone down on the Reshiram, and all the other Pokemon are powered up and can start taking KOs. So down goes that Dradagon. 2 prizes already taken for our player on the bottom. The choice of which promote here is, I mean, you're either going to go with Reshiram or you're going to go with Tatsuguri. It kind of depends on what your hand is. Reshiram will help you accelerate energy, which that is what our player is opting for. So they probably have an energy in hand that they can accelerate. Does look like they actually have Air Balloon as well. So maybe they are just going to go up. We're hoping maybe they would find the energy, and then we're going to retreat into Tatsuguri. Do have a Rescue Stretcher. She's going to be able to shuffle some Pokemon back into the deck, or potentially just grab it and put it back down on the bench. They do just have the Dradagon in the discard, so looks like they did just grab that and bench it. Air Balloon going down on the Reshiram. Just has Adventure Bag. I believe that's Luminous Energy. And a supporter that I can't quite make out. So not a very strong hand. Our player on the top needs a lot more resources to stay in this game. Again, they're at this point very far behind. Player in red just has so many attackers, so many energies. Oh, it's Raihan. Okay. So Raihan will help them with their energy struggles a little bit. They could potentially Raihan energy up to the Dradagon, go find maybe their own Double Dragon energy, take 2 prizes this turn. I don't know if that's the best play, because they would put themselves right back in the exact same situation where they have nothing set up, and this time their Raihan would be down, so they wouldn't be able to rely on that next turn to help them get another attack off. Might be better for them to just buy time at this point and not take the initiative. So this is kind of what I was saying before, where you can get in a situation in this matchup where you're reluctant to actually take attacks. But our player is able to find Field Blower, so opting for that instead, going to be able to KO this Regidrago by just Field Blowering away that Luxurious Cape. That will force their opponent to come up with another Pokemon. And I believe since they do have that Luminous Energy, it might not be a Luminous Energy, I think it may be a Prism Energy. In any case, it's one of those Rainbow-style energies I think that's in the hand. So they will be able to potentially come up with Regidrago this turn and KO something. Oof, might have been a little premature in attaching that energy. They did telegraph that they're going to get the KO this turn. Looked like the player was already debating the Reshiram. But after seeing the energy go down, they're probably like, yeah, I don't want to lose one of my attackers, so I will promote this Reshiram and give that to you. If our player on top hadn't been so eager, maybe our player on the bottom would have made a mistake and gone up with one of their other attackers instead. I think it's doubtful. We had a lot of good players at this tournament today, so that's a pretty obvious mistake or obvious trap not to walk into. While the Reshiram is a powerful part of your game plan, you already have so many energies attached on your Pokemon. You don't need to risk taking up one of your attackers that has a bunch of energy attached and letting it get KO'd, while your opponent doesn't have a large hand size. If they did have the energy attachment and could go up and attack, then you're just giving up another attacker and a couple of energies for no reason. So player ultimately retreating into the Regidrago, not wanting to take the initiative, starts drawing cards. I think they did ask me, oh no, did I shuffle there? Would have been a little late if they hadn't, but they did shuffle, so they're okay. Nest Ball. is going down, so going to be able to find another Pokemon from the deck. Actually, looks like the player is just opting to shuffle, so they just wanted to thin out the deck, or sorry, thin out the hand. They don't want that in there. They want to be able to draw some additional cards next turn. If they get End or Iono next turn, they don't want that Nest Ball going back into the deck. Pokegear going down for our player in red. So going to be able to find a supporter. Ooh, getting Raihan. Kind of funny again. So I was talking about these decks mirroring each other. Our player on top played Raihan last turn, and now our player on bottom has their own Raihan. They can't play it since our player on top did not take KO. So Raihan is not useful for our player on the bottom. For their sake, they hopefully have another supporter in hand. I believe we're going to get into potentially a little bit of an awkward situation here. Again, neither player probably going to want to take the initiative. Player on top knows they can't. If they're the ones that starts off taking attacks, then they're going to lose that. With how they're set up right now, they don't have the attackers. They don't have the energy. They were going to go up with their Dradagon, KO this Reshiram, then Dradagon comes up and just KOs them right back, and they have nothing. On the opposite side, though, it's a little awkward too for our player in red. While they're definitely in a better position, again, it's a little weird. So if they went up, Raging Bolt, can't KO anything at the moment. It would need one more energy to get that Tatsuguri. So our player is able to use that Reshiram to get 2 energies down this turn on Drampa. They attached Grass for turn and then used Reshiram to get a fire energy down, and ultimately plays Hex Maniac before passing. But again, as I was saying, if they went up with the Regidrago, they'd have to, or not the Regidrago, the Raging Bolt, they'd have to commit an additional energy to that Pokemon. That would let them take Tatsuguri. That would then force their opponent to have a way to retreat the Regidrago to be able to come up with the Dradagon to take the KO. But again, if our player in gray did that, then their opponent just goes up with the Dradagon, takes their KO with their own Dradagon, and again, they're back to square one. They've got nothing. So again, red looking in a much more commanding position. Their only problem for them is they've got this Reshiram in the active and no way to get it out. I don't think they've got their own. Their Float Stone got blown away, and they don't have their Air Balloon. So yeah, it looks like we're maybe in a little bit of a stalemate. So our player on top is just attaching energy and then passing. Color's Tenacity going down. And finding that Stormy Mountain. I would be a little surprised if they go ahead and play the Stormy Mountain. Their opponent did use an S-Ball and then just immediately shuffle, so they probably know that their opponent doesn't have anything they want to play, but I'm not really sure that they care to get anything else in play on their own side. Their Regidrago is in the discard, so I think, yep, they're just passing. So we still looking very strong for our player on the bottom, but they don't have any way to go up and start taking knockouts. So player on top does have another energy they can attach, so debating putting it on the Raging Bolt. But I mean, if they're doing the math, it's just so awkward right now. Does draw fire energy. Unfortunately, their Reshiram is not on the active, so they cannot accelerate that, so it just passes over. I think we might kind of see both of these players not do too much in these next couple of turns. With what our red player has in hand, honestly, they just really can't do very much. They could knock off an energy with that enhanced hammer. They probably want to play it, save it for the dragon energy. While that prism energy is very tempting, dragon energy is just so strong. Does opt to play the Stormy Mountain. Does not find any Pokemon off of it, so just going to get a deck shuffle off of that. Our player does have one more energy in hand, so they can fully power up their Drampa and have 3 attackers ready to go. Though again, Raging Bolt is not the most useful attacker here. There are ways to make it useful still in this matchup. They could go up with their Drampa. Player on top decks the Stormy Mountain. It's like, dang it, I can't even play this stupid card now so that I can draw additional cards off my Regidrago. It looks like they might have GuuBuu and Hala is, I think, what they were debating. So yeah, I think that is GuuBuu and Hala. They are debating using that. It will thin down the hand and allow them to find some additional resources. Fortunately, though, for them, we know their opponent has enhanced hammer in their hand. So if they attach this dragon energy, they're kind of just playing right into their opponent's hand. God, this is so rough for our player in gray. Red was able to just get out the gate very quickly with that turbo energize, and ever since then, our player in gray has just been playing catch up. Each player has been honestly matching each other's moves in a lot of different ways. Both opened very similar, but that's what comes down to in these mirror matches a lot of time. It's just those minor differences. Who starts getting those leads? And this wasn't a minor thing, actually. This was a major thing. Having turbo energize on one side and not on the other side is just too much. So players were asking if Dragon Horde had been used this turn. It had not, so it was able to draw an extra card and passing it over. So it does get the dragon energy down, but that's going to get knocked right off with that enhanced hammer. There is no reason to save that now. You definitely want to play that down. Take out that powerful energy card. Set your opponent back significantly. With 4 energies in play on that Raging Bolt, it is starting to become a threat, but it's not anymore. There's that enhanced hammer and then pass over. So again, unfortunately, we're in a little bit of a stalemate. Neither player, our player on top can't take the initiative. They know if they do, then they lose. And our player on the bottom just doesn't have the way to be able to take the initiative. They can't get this rescue ram out of the active, so at the moment, they're just kind of content to just pass. Using Colress to just find an energy card. This deck does not run a lot of stadiums, and we've already seen the Storming Mountain as well as the Silent Lab come out of the deck. I don't think either one is, or either deck runs any more stadiums than that one. So getting one more energy down on the Raging Bolt. Debating putting on Silent Lab, but then you can't use your Dragon Horde, which is really the main reason you want to play that. So ultimately opting to put it down, thinking that maybe they can shut down their opponent's Rescue Ram. Not sure I totally agree with this play. It's like you want to draw more cards off of the Dragon's Horde. So I did get a slight glimpse in the hand. Our player on top does have a Guzma, but again, unfortunately, their opponent just has so many energies down. Like that's not a good play. Even if you can take a KO, you just don't want to. What you want is to get that Raging Bolt into the active, start sniping things on the bench. That's really the play that our player on top wanted. If they were able to have kept that dragon energy, they would be starting to look much, much better right now. They have, well, I guess again, Guzma is not helpful because you don't want to get this rescue ram out of the active. You want that thing trapped. Unfortunately for our player on the top, it does have 1 energy on the rescue ram for their opponent, which means one more energy and it can retreat out of the active. Again, red is in a much better position to be able to take the initiative. If they're able to get into the active, they can start attacking and they will win that exchange. Crispin going down. Player on top is trying to solve their energy problems. So they're going to grab a fire and a lightning out of the deck. See where those cards go. I will not be surprised to see one go on to the Raging Bolt. And then might actually see one attached to the Regidrago. I don't believe our player has attached an energy for turn just yet. So it does put one on Regidrago, and then attaching for turn to the Raging Bolt. So Raging Bolt's starting to become a pretty big threat with 4 energies on it. It's doing 120 damage. Still not quite KOing anything. I think, actually, does Dradagon have 120 HP? I can't remember if it's 120 or 130. Player on bottom is attaching 1 more energy to Raging Bolt. So they do have energies in hand. They can just retreat with Rescue Ram now on the next turn if they want to and start taking attacks. Not totally sure that's what they want to do. If they do go up with Drampa, I don't think they're getting a KO. That's actually an attack that I'm not super familiar with. I would have to look it up just to be sure what it does. But I don't think you're doing enough damage with it to get a KO right away, though I could be wrong. So tag call going down for our player. I believe he's played pretty much all of his... no, I guess he does have Cynthia and Cadence still, and Mala and Lana. I forgot that Mala and Lana got shuffled back into the deck. So does have that as an option. Let's see here. So the Drampa... Okay, so it's doing 140 damage, because it does have 2 different types of energy attached to it. So with 1 more energies, it can do 140. It is going to be able to take KOs on a lot of the things on their opponent's side of the field. Isn't taking a KO on the Regidrago, so I was right there. It's not strong enough to be able to take that KO, which is probably why they're a little reluctant to go up themselves. Both players honestly might be in a spot where each one just wants to use their Raging Bolt to snipe their opponent's Pokemon. So I think right now what our player on the bottom could do is attach an energy for turn, retreat, go up into the Raging Bolt, then snipe that Tatsuguri and start taking prizes again. Anticipating that, though, we'll see if our player on top uses Cynthia and Caitlin to get back Raihan. If they do that, that might deter their opponent from wanting to take a KO next turn. So player was asking, hey, how does this work if I don't want to discard a card and draw 3? And replying, yeah, you just swap them, basically. Passing over after grabbing that Crispin, so going to use that to get more energies in play. I think they're just looking to continue to power up this Raging Bolt. They can potentially use that Crispin to attach 2 energies to the Regidrago, retreat that, and again start using their Raging Bolt to snipe things on the bench. Gosh, this really just has been a stalemate. Two powerful dragon decks just staring each other down. I'm just imagining these trainers just looking at each other with these like powerful dragons standing in the background and neither one wanting to take the initiative. But here we go. The stalemate is going to be broken. Escape rope going down, forcing their opponent to choose a Pokemon to bring into the active. They were a little unsure at first, but ultimately decided on Drampa. Up goes Reshiram. Going to be able to use Crispin. Find 2 energies. Attach both for turn with, well, 1 with Crispin and then probably 1 with Raging Bolt. Ooh, I guess maybe doesn't have the energy they need to actually be able to use that Reshiram ability, unfortunately. So that could have been a great play if they did, but looks like they don't quite have that. So Crispin going to attach 1 energy to the Regidrago, or sorry, the Dradagon, and then 1 to the Regidrago for turn. This will allow them to use the Dradagon to its second attack to take a KO this turn. Since Revenge is not activated, their opponent has not taken a KO. They do have to attach 1 more energy to take a KO this turn. It's probably not the play that this player wanted to make, but you know, at some point somebody had to break that stalemate. I actually do wonder if it would have been a better play to Guzma up the Regidrago, trap that in the active potentially, and then start attacking with your Raging Bolt, sniping off some of those bench Pokemon. Like you are running the risk of your opponent, you know, powering up that Regidrago, but if they are running basically the same list, you have your own Enhanced Hammer. I don't believe our player on top has used theirs yet. So they could potentially have knocked off energy cards from Regidrago. Night Stretcher allowing our player on bottom to get another energy back from the discard. Opting for the fire over the grass. They are able to KO Tatsuguri this turn, and I believe the Dradagon, I think Dradagon is just 120 HP, so it does go down. Taking another prize. This game is probably going to be pretty quick now that combat's started back up again. Neither player just staring each other down anymore. They are just exchanging blows. There was a long time where both players were either reluctant or unable to take attacks. But now that the battle has started up in earnest again, we're just going to see probably blow by blow. I don't think this exchange is going to go in the favor of our player on top, though. Looking at what they've got down, again, if they retreat into Raging Bolt, they can choose to, I think at this point, pretty much KO anything on their opponent's side besides the Regidrago. Is opting for Guzma, trying to trap the Reshiram in the active. They know their opponent has an energy in hand, though, so not the most useful. But this will let them get their Raging Bolt into the active. Can potentially use that to snipe off one of the benched Pokemon. They can't quite KO Raging Bolt, so they might target the Dradagon. Players just counting up their energies and making sure how much damage they're doing. Does KO the Dradagon, takes a prize. So unfortunately, well, I guess actually this works out decently well. Because now if you attach for turn on the Reshiram, which that's your only energy in hand. Actually, no, they have Raihan. So if they can just use Raihan, get an energy attachment. Oh gosh, but they're not. Wait, this is kind of turned around a little bit more than I necessarily realized off the bat. So if you attach for turn here so you can retreat, you can Raihan. You could Raihan to the Regidrago. Regidrago will then be able to take a KO this turn. But if your opponent has an energy for their own Regidrago, then that just gets KO'd right back. Oh yeah, wow. This position's not quite as bad for our player on top as I was thinking. It's not the strongest position. Our player on the bottom is going to be able to get one of any card that they want from their deck. They do still have Wishful Baton available. So with the Wishful Baton, they can go up, take a KO. If they get KO'd back with the Regidrago, Wishful Baton puts all energy on Raging Bolt. Raging Bolt then should have enough energy to be able to KO anything. Because it would have, I believe, 5 total attached. Well, I guess no, 5 is not quite enough. It still wouldn't KO you. You'd need 1 more energy for turn. So did opt for that Wishful Baton. So it looks like they're seeing similar play to what I was seeing. But again, without an additional energy, there we go. Stop the player. I was watching for that Silent Lab to turn off the ability. Did not want this game to end by just getting a double prize right there. If that player had drawn some extra cards, unfortunately, that's probably the way that it would have gone. When you're getting that extra information from the deck, there's just the potential for advantage there. We have to randomize the deck, so it's normally what normally what we would do there. But able to stop that since I was sitting there watching this. Energy retrieval, letting our player get 1 more energy. Gosh, unfortunately though, because of this Wishful Baton, this makes things a little awkward. If they KO it, 2 energies goes to Raging Bolt. That's putting them at 150, which is not quite KOing Regidrago, but if their opponent just has an attachment for turn, does have the Lost Vacuum. Wait, getting rid of Silent Lab and not the Wishful Baton? That is a very surprising play. I guess they're thinking the energy attachment is more important here. And I guess they're a little confused by that play. So retreating into Tatsuguri, I'm not sure what supporter they feel like they need this turn. I honestly think it would have been the better play to go up with your Reggie Drago, or if he had just lost back into Way the Wishful Baton, go with Reggie Drago, take the KO, then what does their opponent do? Their Raging Bolt can take a KO on Tatsuguri on the bench, but then you just KO Raging Bolt. Like there wouldn't have been any way for them to follow up. The second attack on Raging Bolt is not strong enough to take the KO on Reggie Drago. I think this might have been a big mistake for our player on top. So it looks like they opted for Clara, I think. Got a couple of resources. Yeah, gosh, that okay. They do have switch cards, so they okay, all right. But now they're giving their opponent the opportunity to. Yeah, I don't know. That seems like such a misplay because if their opponent, I'm not sure what the players are. Oh, I guess our player just decided to scoop. So that is the game. Congratulations to our player on the bottom.